Let me go connect. Oh,
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, man. Can you hear us all good?
Yeah, I can hear you all good. Hold on, I'll get the video on. You can see me all right, yeah?
Here we go. Yeah. Is there any chance you could brighten the light a little bit? It's just we want to be able to see you properly.
Yeah,
Or
mate,
open a window or something. Ideal. Well,
Is that better?
yeah, that's actually is there any chance you get the light source sort of in front of your face? Because I feel like, or is there a window there or
Sure.
something? Sorry to be.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds. I'll shine this lamp over it.
There you go, mate. I'm going with the lamp method right now. So
Here we go. Yeah?
yeah, that's slightly better. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Shame I don't have one of those ring lights, mate.
Yeah.
Or maybe I could just put it here. I think that'll have to do, mate.
Mate, it's fine. I mean, look, the most important thing
Yeah.
is that you're here and we're going to have a sick conversation. Do you know what I mean? When it's not about the video
Yes, mate.
aesthetics necessarily. But thank you for randomly coming on a Zoom call on a Monday.
It's all right, mate.
I'm Joel and this is Jacob.
that's me.
Nice to meet you, boys.
So yeah, you're probably a bit confused. Have you gone on a podcast before, or was this just a question you saw in your email out of the blue and thought, yeah, fuck it, I'll do it?
Yeah, no, I saw the email. I think it was through Bandcamp, wasn't it? And yeah, I looked on some of your stuff. And, yeah, I was interested in what you're talking about, really, because I'm a bit like that.
Yeah, well, a bit mental.
Yeah, you could put it that way.
Good.
You could put it that way, but yeah.
Good. Well, I want to get into that. So obviously, we know you for your music name, but what's your human name in inverted commas? Is it Lewis? Louis is?
Oh, Lewis, yeah.
Lewis, cool. Feel weird just referring to you as your like Farsi music name. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think we'll start with. I want to explain to you maybe a little bit about why you're here and some context of why we got in touch with you. So I personally have been listening to your music for about 3 years every day, basically. And I discovered your stuff probably like a lot of people did in Joe Delaney's YouTube videos. And sort of hearing that in the soundtrack, looking into you on Spotify, and then just being a fan of your music from then on. And I wanted to start by delving into something you said, or two statements you've said, to then give listeners a bit more of insight into sort of what you're about, what your music is about. So correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I don't want to put words into your mouth. But you said on Spotify initially that the purpose of your music was to change or alter the chemistry of the brain. And then recently it was changed to a balance between melancholy and hope. So could you start by maybe elaborating on what those ideas mean to you and how that relates to your music?
Yeah. Changing the chemistry of the brain. I would say that comes from, there's a certain emotion I try to get into music, or a feeling. It's kind of like a push and pull between euphoria, but in a am I gonna cry way. It's kind of like this, this push and pull thing. Like, am I feeling this in like a good way, or is this making me sad? I guess it links in with why I changed it now to a balance between melancholy and hope, which is taken from, I can't remember who said that, but I remember thinking I've always found it hard to put it into words what I'm trying to get into the music. I could never really describe it. And there was like this video of like this old artist, and he said something about melancholy and hope. And I was like, oh, that's it. So I thought that's just the perfect description. But changing the chemistry, I don't know if that's me being biased, because it does it to me, but I think music has the power to do that. It's a complex thing, and if you feel a song, I can change like your whole day, or the way you think about your day. I mean, that could run deep. That conversation, it could run really deep.
Yeah, I can relate to what you're saying. I'll tell you, the main times that I listen to your music is when I need to think. to me, it's music that helps me think. And I want to try and figure out by talking to you why maybe that is. Because I put it on when maybe I'm studying, or a big one for me is when I'm driving. So I'll put your music on when I'm in the car on the M5 for like 2 hours. And that time will just whip by. And it's almost like, because it's sort of very limited lyrics and it's a lot about the atmospheric sounds and it pulls on my emotions, that time just flies by, and my mind can go to different places that when you're listening to a pop song or anything else, your brain can't get into that state. So that's why I found those statements of how you describe what you do quite interesting. So is that something that you find in your music as well, that maybe that links to the altering chemistry bit, that it puts your brain in a different state to think differently and like you said, feel differently and change the day?
Definitely, yeah. I think that's something to do with my like for, like you say, atmospheric, just the space the music is in, certain repetitive, like a repetitive nature to it. Like if a hook's just carrying through the song. I mean, a lot of songs have that, but it's the atmospherics around it that make it hypnotizing or, entrancing. Like you say, you drive to it. That's cool. Like, yeah, I wish I had a car to do that.
This like line between, is that hope and melancholy, like it seems like there's something that's like larger than life that you kind of experience as achieved there. It's kind of like your music might fluctuate between the two, but like how are you able to sort of create that experience?
Oof. It's hard because a lot of songs I make don't feel right. It's like fishing, really. It really is. It's for a certain type of fish. Do you know what I mean? I could sit upstairs in the studio for 2 weeks and nothing will be there, and I could maybe write like a 8-loop thing where that feeling that I want that you're describing there is there. But then when I stretch out the song to a full song, I might mess it up. So then and I have to do it again. So it's just this constant battle of just trying to get that right feeling, but you usually know straight away. It's just an accumulation or a culmination of the right sounds, warmth, atmospheric sound, sample choice, stuff like that.
So like a lot of the time when you actually are trying, the result doesn't feel right, and it's like really hard to get that right feeling.
Definitely. If you try too hard, you just get in your own way. It needs to come off the cuff due to experience in life. And you can only do that by experiencing life, really. I don't like if you sit down and make a tune and you're keen on making this certain type of tune, well, you might be able to do it, but it's a lot harder than just letting yourself go at free will and just seeing what happens, because that's usually where the best stuff comes out.
How do you attach like sound to experience though? That's something I've always been curious of, like electronic music, because it's not necessarily, you're not writing down lyrics of describing what happens. You're trying to create like a feeling. Like how do you do that?
How do you do it? That's a hard one. That's a deep question. How do you do that? Well, This Feeling, which is a song I released in January, I think was influenced by watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Honestly, I was sat with my girlfriend, and I don't know why that song hit me, and just like the way it was sat in a line. And there was just something about that moment that I was just sucked into it. It just kind of gave me this weird feeling. I just knew exactly what kind of tune I wanted and what feeling. But how I did it, it's just storing that just that moment. It's trying to store that moment and get it out in certain notes and atmospheres in the song. Really, it was really hard to describe.
I love what you're saying, and I want to I've got a couple of ideas in my head. I want to try and link them together and see what you think of it, right? So, have you heard of a philosopher called Alan Watts? He was like big in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. He's dead now, but there's a lot of his samples that are used in atmospheric music, and his lectures are like big. He's like some bloke that converted Eastern philosophy to a Western audience. Do you know who I'm on about, or is that sort of unknown to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had this, he talked in, because I love music that has him in it, and I've loved his lectures and stuff. It just takes me away to a different realm, man. And he talked about this idea that when you try and describe something in life with words, you limit it. And he said, when you try and not look at something like a leaf and call it a leaf, and you actually just try and perceive the thing without any limitation through language, you enter what he calls the unspeakable world, which contains all the magic and all the mysticism and beauty in the world that we often limit due to language as an attempt to describe it and measure it. Do you know what I mean? And what I've gathered from listening to you is your music reflects parts of the unspeakable world, because you're not trying to use lyrics. You're not trying to tell a story necessarily through words like any other song does, right? You talk a lot about feeling, and that is why maybe your music changes my state of consciousness in some way, because you get a moment in your life, maybe it's watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, right? And you get a feeling, and you could try and describe to us what that felt like in words. But instead, you feel a little spark of inspiration. You go to the studio, you create something from nothing, and then release that song, and I can listen to it. And although I had no idea it was about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, whatever you felt in that moment, I'm feeling it too. And it's like you're describing something more than words could ever do. Even though words are a great thing that, advanced our society to where it is now, and it enables us to communicate over Zoom like this now, maybe it doesn't do things like beauty and dancing on that line between melancholy and hope. Maybe words don't do that stuff justice. So that feeling that you're describing and trying to get across through your music goes beyond words.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So
there's like a middle world there that's hard to describe.
Yeah.
Only a few people enjoy it only a few people enjoy it as well. I've noticed that it's a certain type of person.
Yeah, and what do you think that type of person is?
Oh, complex. Usually a little more. Yeah, complex someone.
Yeah,
because there's probably more to be done in interpretation. It's not sort of given to you. You kind of relate it to yourself and you find how it relates to you rather than it being given.
Yeah, are you trying to describe like the personality of the character there?
Well, yeah, sort of. I think of this with Biceps music as well. Like, I kind of link it to an experience that's personal to me, rather than if it's got like a mainstream pop song with lyrics and a story. It's you're listening to their experience rather than like maybe not listening to your own.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I find music like yours enhances experience, right? And so for example, I was on holiday recently on the island of Sardinia, and on many evenings I would go to beaches and just watch the sun go down and be there until like the stars came out. And it's like as much as I do like other music with lyrics, with a classic melody and a catchy chorus and stuff, there's something about the atmospheric stuff. It's almost like it enhances the feeling that I'm getting in that moment. And maybe it only affects a certain type of person because you have to be aware or conscious or awake enough to recognize the experience you're having and let that feeling manifest in you. And then the music can take up to another level, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, Bicep are really good at that. I've always wondered what kind of guys they are, because they're a bit under the radar. They don't do many interviews. They're not very, in the public eye. Their set's very like, they're side to side. They don't really look at the crowd. They've got a bit of a, mysterious character to them. But to write that music, and especially as a duo, I think I asked them in a Reddit, Ask Me Anything once. I was like, how hard is it to combine that sort of feeling together? Because usually it's one person that's good at that. I would know that from being in bands. There's usually maybe one or two max in the band. Usually only one who can really get a sense of feeling. But yeah, Bicep seems to do it really well as a duo. Don't know, are they brothers or something? I'm not sure.
There's little like layered on top of each other, like very clearly, and it somehow just works. Like you get three totally different sort of passages, and it then creates this like full-on experience where stuff's like perfectly like warped, and it's so original as well. Like, how do they even come up with it?
I don't know. They're pioneers, aren't they?
It's like art. It's like abstract art, isn't it? It's like if you look at a bit of abstract Picasso or something, and there's all these stray lines and shapes and odd bits that on their own you'd think, well, that's weird. And then when it's put in this image collectively, it comes together as this also weird image. But as a whole, you can sort of add your own perception and spin on it, and it becomes something quite profound and quite beautiful. I'd like to know, from your own perspective, and you can explain this any way you like, what is your creative process? Because you said you have a feeling when you experience in the world, and you try and translate that into sounds. But is it a matter of testing and listening to the music and seeing if it does that feeling justice, or do you you start with a certain part of the song, and like, where do you go? What's the process of 0 to 1, and then from that base moving into the song being released? What's that journey like?
At the minute, I've sat behind the computer for a while and haven't been able to come out with anything. I don't know if it's because I've not had enough experiences, or my experiences are becoming too repetitive at the minute. Well, yeah, I don't think that certain feeling that I want from a song I seem to be getting at the minute. But the creative process is, I'd usually start with the drums, which can put you in a little bit of a hole sometimes. But he'll go drums and then chords is really where you're going to start to get that feeling. And I don't have like a great knowledge of theory or anything. And I usually, a lot of the time, as well as Bicep as well, use the same 3 chords. It's just what is around that. But obviously, someone with music knowledge would just think it's a different tune. But if you knew, you would know it's the same 3 chords, just done differently around that core. Yeah, it'll go drums, chords, and then obviously the bass would follow the chords. And then from there, it's just trawling through stuff, which I'm getting a bit annoyed with at the minute, like Splice or any sample website or anything, to find something that would suit that, or just even a tiny little snippet that can change the whole song or feeling. And then, yeah, it would basically go from there. They're the main elements. Everything from there is just atmospherics, and then creating that whole world around it. Yeah, it all starts with experience in life and what you're feeling at that time.
But like with the experience of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like that's quite like a normal experience, or like it's not like skydiving or anything like. But how can you? Well, what is it about like that really simplistic experience that you're then able to like translate into music?
it was because I was with my girlfriend and our children, and sitting there thinking that, I don't know, 10 years ago I was just partying, doing really weird stuff, just not caring, and just sat in that environment. Just like, how did I get here? And then just the end of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't know, it just hit me with this certain epicness and emotion. And the sound system in there was insane. You could feel like what was going on in the film. I actually really enjoyed the film as well. I don't think it's for children, you know. It's so well done. And it's actually a bit dark at times as well. Yeah, it was the end credits. You'll see similarities in that end credit songs to, I think it's called end credits. You'll see similarities in that to this feeling, because it was inspired in that moment from that song and what was going on around me.
Yeah, and as much as that seems like a mundane experience of going to the cinema, it's not really, from what you described in the way that I'm thinking about it. You're there with your partner and her kids, and that's something in itself. That's like this family vibe, and you're with your tribe, you're with your people that you love. And then you're thinking about your past, and it's like, wow, how much has changed? So you're also looking back at who you were, and there's a bit of nostalgia there, maybe a bit of remorse, maybe a bit of joy and pride. And then thinking about, wow, look at the journey that I've come on to end up in this cinema watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But then also this feeling is brought about by the narrative of the movie. I mean, I don't know what the hell happened, but there would have been some sort of plot, some sort of problem, then the problem got solved, and that comes with an emotional crescendo. And all those factors come together. You're thinking about you and how the situation you're in, the way you've changed, and now there's all these emotions bubbling up from the surface, and it's like, I can see why you got a feeling like that.
Well, the question of how did I get it is very deep.
Yeah, yeah, man. There's no wonder.
I always think that. Honestly, if it's good or bad, yeah, either end. And you say, how did I end up here? Because life can pull you in like so many. It can pull you at both at the same time. It's a weird, yeah. That's a hard one.
Well,
yeah, yeah.
Well, what do you think is? Well, it's the answer. You kind of figure it out, and you think back, and you think of moments that changed the trajectory, or maybe there's something bigger.
Well, it could be both, couldn't it? I don't know if you believe in destiny or anything like that. But yeah, it's every movement you make. Like if I was to go to Oldie in a minute, that's going to change my trajectory for the rest of my life, probably, because I'm going to think differently when I get home. Whereas if I was to just stay sat here for the night, I'd probably, I don't know, do random stuff like watch a pointless YouTube video.
But even the small things though, like, because going to Aldi and like staying at home, but like they're relatively like not anything unusual. Well, something unusual could happen, but if we assume that it won't, and you've done it loads of times before, and it's just going to be like the same, like does that, like, how much does that influence the trajectory?
It's all little micro steps, isn't it? You know, I think all the micro steps combine into whatever the hell the big step is. But it's weird life, isn't it? Because you're sort of thrust into this. We don't choose this, do we? I mean, you're just born and thrown into experience. Actually, there was a psychologist called, I think, was it Heidegger or Rogers, one of the humanistic types back in like the 20th century. They talked about this idea of thrownness. Like we're just thrown into experience. A sperm fertilizes an egg. Then 9 months, you're grown in a womb. Then you come out and you're just unconscious and crying and feeling and hunger and desire. And then you grow up and you get socialized and you deal with anxiety and other children. And you grow up and you have to figure out that you're a person and that you live in the world and there are things you want to do and things you're afraid of. And like, we didn't choose any of this, right? And there are so many different alterations to our path, like a train track changing spontaneously, that we didn't choose. So yes, we have the choice to go to Aldi on a Monday evening, but like, there are also a lot of things I didn't choose, like my personality disposition and what my parents wanted of me and the biases they might have put in my brain from early on, good or bad. And then you're sat in a cinema watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, looking around going, did I really get here on my own? And this is quite nice. And it's been given to me in a lot of ways. And that feeling of being thrust into an experience when it goes well is magical. And it does send you into weird emotional places. And I'm so glad that you've encapsulated it in a song, because it's part of that hidden part of life that people either don't have the awareness to address or don't want to address because it might be uncomfortable or whatever. Like, I found your music has helped me process weird emotional things in life. Situations that where I've listened to your music in the car and I've been managed to sort of process, I don't know, a relationship breaking down or something not going how you want it to go, and I've got this feeling in my heart center and solar plexus that's sort of tight and unsure, and then I hear your music and it sort of allows that to sort of be free. I can hear the atmospheric tones and get lost in it, and it just reminds me of like, oh, why are you here? Well, you're here because life's a weird adventure you didn't choose. Just roll with it, you know, like drift. And yeah, that's where your music takes me. And I understand, like, that's why I find that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story is so funny, because it's not profound and is at the same time, like a lot of things. So yeah, I want to go a bit back now into how did you start doing this, right? We're talking about having an experience and feeling a certain way and then wanting to relate that to music. What were your beginning stages like of like, right, I'm feeling a certain way in life, I want to create? Were you a teenager? Was it in this period where you're partying and you're a lot younger? And like, what's your journey like? Take me back to sort of the beginning.
We started off with piano. That's where it all began when I was like, I think I was 7 or 8. Yeah, my dad, just made me take lessons on like a upright piano. I think it all stemmed from there. I didn't really get that good. I learned how to play some basic chords and like some tunes, you know, and some like show-off tunes that you play at like a party when you're 12. Everyone's like, ooh. And then you soon get bored of them. I'll still play them now, actually, and it just makes me feel a little bit sick. Yeah, then I started playing drums, and then it led on to studying in Brighton at BIM. Don't know if you know that uni. Yeah, but I don't know where that emotional kind of bittersweet feeling came in. I think that was through production, because I was in party bands all through my 20s. And then I started doing office jobs. And I think it was at that point I just got so fed up. And I just started lying about my stats in my office job. And all I was doing was, because you know, you got 2 screens. All I would do is just have like the work on one and learning about production on the other, and I'd use the printer to like print off loads of articles about how to learn production and stuff. I was completely obsessed with it. I was relentless for probably 2 years straight. And then I sort of learned how to make a tune, but obviously prior to that I was a musician, so I had some basic knowledge. And then just lucky enough I stumbled upon because I used to be into fitness, so I was watching Joe Delaney's videos. And then there was, at the end of the video, he's like, oh, does anyone make tunes? And I was like, well, yeah, I'll make tunes. So I contacted him, and he was like, yeah, send me over a tune. Actually, no, he said he wanted one that was like, I think it was The Streets. Oh, what's that song called? It's like The Streets, anyway. Yeah, that was Nostalgia Part 1. I think I just called it Nostalgia. And yeah, it just went from there. And then I just noticed there was a certain emotion that I was just getting out naturally. And it just happened. I didn't choose it. It just happened, like you were saying before.
Mm. And what year was this when you he got in contact with you and you started? Was that when you sort of started making music more? Was this the same era as the office job frustration? And
Yeah, I think I was still in that job when that was going on. Yeah. When was that? About 4 or 5 years ago? 5 years ago?
right, okay, yeah. I think
You just need you just need an opportunity, don't you, to show your music to the world, and that's great that you got that, because otherwise we wouldn't have discovered you.
that's it. You wouldn't be on Zoom with 2 random 19-year-olds on a Monday night. You know what I mean? Aren't we thrust into weird situations in life?
In 19, yeah, I thought you'd be older than that.
Oh, but I'd take that.
Not like in a bad way.
No. I mean, most 19-year-olds wouldn't listen to atmospheric music and go, I want to talk to the guy that made this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Where have you got that brain from at the age of 19?
I don't know, mate. Like I say, I didn't choose it. And everything
Choose it.
Everything followed. Well, I didn't genuinely, like, you know.
So do you think? Wait, like I've got like an overall question. Like, do you think our craft like chooses us?
Ooh, that's deep.
Some people have it, some people don't. It's fact. There's so much music out there. I reckon there's so many producers out there now, or musicians. You could line them all up in a row, or tell them all to make the same song. I guarantee there's going to be like one out of that you truly feel, or maybe even 0, or maybe 4. It just depends on like who you've got. It's just there's some people who just possess this quality, which is the complexity of something going on in the brain that's indescribable, and just some people don't.
Talent, or more sort of intuition?
I'd say intuition, yeah. I think it's something more mystical than, I don't know, the scientific world would like.
Yeah, we're given a gift. So it's like kind of how sort of I compare it to Lionel Messi with. He's given a gift that's. I think you can sort of brute force your way through it with relentless work, but it seems to be something higher than ourselves that give us this opportunity.
Are you religious?
That is a deep question. Jake, you answer it first, I'll answer it.
I have been debating like whether God exists since the start of the year. I think I've actually like considered it, and I'm more leaning towards the side that he does, but I don't conform to any religion. And recently, I have been praying like because I've just been given suggestions and stuff too. So I'm not religious, but I lean towards God believes I will be potentially religious in the future.
And I find that term to be painted by so many suboptimal ideas. And people talk about, are you religious? They think of like, do you go to church on a Sunday and eat bread and drink wine and then pray to this bloke that's got a collar on with a white bit in the middle? And like, you know, he claims he doesn't ever have sex, but I bet he's having angry wanks in his bedroom. Do you know what I mean? And that, right? But I do believe that there's more to life than what we can see. You know what I mean? Like our perceptual systems can view a finite window of what's there. Everything's just waves, bro. The light, what we hear, even what we can sense and smell and touch are all just different molecules and textures that receptor cells underneath my fingers can detect, right? And I'm constricted by those bounds. And I know that there's so much beyond that. Just because there is, like, look at the light spectrum and the sound spectrum, and these are just things most people don't talk about, right? But what God is, to me, is what's beyond those limits. And when you die, the only thing that dies is your human limitation. Like the Joel Clifton experience ends, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's an ending to whatever the hell is happening right now, right? Whatever this movie is that I'm living out. So, yeah, I think I am religious in a way, And I'm very, very interested in the unspeakable world that cannot be described in words. And it's experiences that I'm interested in. And I think experiencing life through a religious lens or a mystical lens makes it so much more profound, if that makes any sense. And I'll ask you the same question. Are you religious? Because I'd like to see how you'd interpret that question.
It's a hard one for me. Religious. You know, I know a guy at the end of my road. Can I speak about addiction?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, you speak about anything.
Addiction has been something that's been running through my life for a while. And I find it ironic that people in heavy addiction have this idea of the devil in particular. Not this guy with horns. I just believe it's a certain presence of something that just isn't pleasant. And I've met many a people who are in active addiction. They all describe it the same, but it's only usually heavy addicts, not someone who's just like a weekend drinker. It's more the people more inclined to really push it. Like even outside Aldi the other day when I was with Sophie, this guy was shouting to a guy, "You'll go into hell," and he had a can in his hand. And he was like, "Actually, no, you're not. You're going to heaven." That's what Sophie said to me. And I was just thinking about it on the drive home. That's crazy how, like, I haven't met this guy before, but I know he's speaking like they all do. And I find that interesting because I believe that alcohol, when it gets to a certain point, it can open gates in your head to certain things you don't want to see and certain perception of life. And, yeah, like you're describing, maybe like a different side of what you probably shouldn't see because it's a bit too, I don't know, it can warp your thoughts, your internal perception of everything. It's a hard one to describe. I don't want to say it's like a devil with horns, you know what I mean? But
it changes your baseline, so then that affects everything else and the way you do everything else.
Yeah, and well, let's think about it this way, okay? The devil that's the red bloke with the pitchfork and the horns that lives like under heaven and there's lots of fire and lava and torture. That's just a symbolic representation created by human beings to understand a fundamental aspect of reality.
That's what's going on in your mind.
And that's how you have to try and understand it in fiction and in pop culture. But what that's actually saying on a deep level, potentially, I'm just playing with ideas here, is there is a spirit in the world that is not good. And there is a spirit that is good. And maybe that's what God and the devil and good and evil is, right? We all know what it feels like to be animated. I use that term specifically, like our actions and beliefs are animated by a spirit that is not good, one that we wouldn't choose. When we think things about other people that are not nice, when we're jealous, when we're hateful, it's almost like we're filled with this goo, like dark, dingy treacle running through our blood as we go and do things, right? I think that's real. And your conscience in sort of psychologically stable people has the purpose of recognizing when we're animated by the wrong spirit. Like, psychopaths just go around and I think they're animated by this spirit all the time and they manipulate people and cause damage and don't have that conscience. But then on the other side of that, there's also this spirit that animates you when you do good things, when you're friendly, when you have a good conversation with someone, when you connect with someone on a deep level, when you give food to a homeless person, or you give your friend a gift that you weren't supposed to give them because it was their birthday, you just decided, you saw something and you gave it to them. You get this warm feeling. That's a spirit animating you. And yes, you can give me a scientific paper on how that's due to a neurochemical or a hormone. I'm like, that's great. But the way I see it is life is powered by these two forces. And it's interesting, yeah, that a lot of people with addictions and other psychological disorders and people that lose touch with the reality talk about spirits and the evil, and maybe it's a real thing. And then it goes back to, what we mean by real, because that devil guy with the horns doesn't exist, but these forces that guide our actions, just subjectively, I think we can relate to them. What are you gonna say, Jake?
So these people that have addictions, it's like there's some negative energy that's kind of attached onto them because they're doing these certain things, and therefore they sort of get possessed by it.
Yeah, well, that's isn't it? Well, that's to me what it probably is
in a
much,
nutshell.
because they don't want to do the thing, but they're compelled. And biologically, that might be a deficiency in a certain neurochemical or whatever, but it feels like there's a ghost in you that makes you do this thing. It's like you're being tortured from a past life or something you've done. And it's always people with addiction are always cursed by something in their childhood or in their past, or something strikes them, and it's almost like they see raw evil, or they experience raw evil, and it goes into their soul, like a Death Eater from Harry Potter.
The like angel and the devil on your shoulder, like that devil's always just like
Takes over. He tugs over. He kills the angel on the other side, and then hope's gone, and all you have is melancholy. Do you know what I mean? You're not in the middle of those two, not at the balance point. You just have one, and then life becomes very dark. So, yeah, how do we even get onto that, man? We're talking about religion.
It's part of it. It's part of the spiritual nature of it.
Yeah, I mean, would you say
Linked.
Would you say? I mean, I get this vibe just from talking to you, but I'm interested in what you say. Would you say you're quite a self-aware guy, and you think about these things on quite a deep level? Because I think you'd have to be in a certain respect to create the things you create, and just your energy on this call is you're very calm and you take time to think about something when I ask you a question. So would you say you have that complexity of mind that can appreciate these deeper aspects of life?
Definitely. It's a curse as well. Definitely having that complexity to question pretty much everything. I don't know if it strips meaning in the sense to gain meaning. It's kind of like as you get a bit older, I don't know, you speak like you're in your 30s or something, and you're only 19, which is crazy. I haven't met many people like that, both of you. But yeah, I don't know, I feel like I'm at a point in life where it's kind of stripping everything that I've known, because I've been in this deluded land where I just kind of avoided negative emotions because I couldn't handle them. And then, yeah, I'm just confronting them to kind of rebuild whatever the meaning is I go from here.
How did you overcome those negative emotions?
I still haven't. It's sitting in them and trying to feel them. If you've avoided them for a long time, it's going to be hardwired in you. So your body will naturally defend them and create this barrier to protect you. It's just about being aware through practice. I'm not saying I'm no guru of it. Definitely not. But slow and steady, as you start to feel things you've probably just never accepted in your life, and just slowly feeling it and just learning why you've protected yourself, because it can be harsh. And then, just trying to build yourself up and create a better meaning to life than just avoiding these things and staying in the same spot emotionally.
Well, Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst from the 20th century, he had this idea of the shadow, which was, you might have heard of it, it's the part of our personality that we don't want to address. And it involves all those negative emotions, that trauma, just things that we have in our mind, but they're in a cupboard under the stairs. They're trapped there, it's locked. And he said that you're not a complete person until you've integrated your shadow. And integrating the shadow doesn't mean keeping it in the box. It also doesn't mean letting it take over and possess you, because the shadow also contains the ways we know we could be possessed by that evil spirit. You know, we all know that if things went really bad, we could do pretty horrible things because it's just part of the human condition. But integrating the shadow means recognizing that we all have the capacity for evil and that we've been through some real shit in our lives and we can feel awful. We can go down to the depths of hell. But when we integrate that and recognize that and process that, then we're a complete human being. I remember, Jacob, you told me about Carl Jung's idea that to reach, there's something about a tree, for a tree to reach up to the kingdom of heaven, its roots must be deep in hell or something like that. And it's that idea that, you have to confront the darkness to see the light. And I think a lot of people go through a journey like you're talking about. So that's profound, man. And it's courageous as well, because I look at, when I meet some people in the later stages of their lives and they're already dead. But I say it's like no one's home. You look in their eyes, no one's there. And I think those are the people that have been hiding from their shadow for so long that it's almost like their life's over. It's like they've been run by it. That the shadow finally broke out of the cupboard under the stairs and took over. And I think a lot of people live life never confronting the demons. Never.
So can you just speak a little bit more about how you integrate your shadow? So it's kind of like accepting it and it's kind of being aware of it, but is that good enough? Is that gonna...
I'll put it in a great context that I really like, that is not mine. I heard this in a Jordan Peterson lecture. He was talking about morality. He was saying, you can't argue that a cat is moral because the cat doesn't really have a concept of good and evil. A house cat will brutally murder a mouse. In fact, it'll play with it. I mean, it might bite its head off, or it might just hit it with its sharp claws multiple times until it's bleeding, and it might even chase it until its heart just stops out of fear. But the cat's not evil, because the cat doesn't have a concept of right and wrong. Whereas human beings, we do. We know if we're psychologically stable. We know when something isn't right because there's a weird voice in our head called the conscience or the superego, whatever you want to call it, that tells us that's not good. Now, if you disregard your shadow and admit that it's not there, then you don't believe you have the capacity to be evil, right? And you will live out your life being harmless, right? And being overly nice, being a people pleaser, right? Giving yourself up and just saying, yeah, it's okay. I'm a great person. I'm an angel. I could never do anything bad. But then you're not a complete person. You'll walk over you. Whereas the part of the shadow that you know is there really deep down, that you could be pretty horrible. And maybe we all were at some point as a kid in certain scenarios when we were less socialized, right? Integrating that is realizing if I wanted to, I could be a dickhead. You know what I mean? If I really was pushed there and I was traumatized and I was backed into a corner like a dog, I would bark. I could kill someone. I could physically do it. And knowing my potential to be harmful and controlling it and knowing that I could do that, but I don't, that's being a more completed person. Does that make sense? It's like bringing the darkness into you and having under control. It's that idea that it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. It's like, same thing with negative emotions. If you just pretend that you live in happiness all the time, well, you'll just numb yourself. You always want to feel good. Oh, okay, Amazon Prime, this new product that I don't need. Eat all this sort of saturated fat and salt and sugar, or pornography, all this kind of shit, right? You want to live in happiness and pleasure and all that kind of, that curses you. But recognizing that you're in pain, right? You grow through that pain. And through pain, you find the things that actually bring you deep joy, not just like impulsive pleasure that doesn't last.
Yeah. It's like, I think a good point to add on is a lot of this negative energy, you can make something good out of it. And it seems, you question that, and it seems like, well, how do you do that? It doesn't almost make sense, but I've kind of learned. I think it's true, and I think you've probably done a bit of that, Farsi, channeling this negative energy into letting it find more hope.
You said that being a bit of a deep thinker was a curse. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, if I look around me now, I don't know if I'm depersonalized or detached a bit from life, but I've always had this screen. I don't know. I'm not saying that life is, 3D or 5D or 4D, something that's fake. Might be, I don't know. I don't know, but I don't know. I've just got a screen where everything just lacks a certain something. Maybe I'm detached and I always have been. There's always just like something in me, and I look into like you're saying about eyes. In my last job, I'll just look around and just see these robotic eyes. Like there's nothing there. It's just people on just being a human for the sake of being a human. They're not questioning what they're doing. They're not feeling anything. They're just waking up and just doing like these movements. And I just think like, I don't know if that's my fault. And maybe if I didn't have that screen or that lack to see more meaning in what, like, I see a lot of meaning, but also a lack of meaning. I wish I could put that into words.
You kind of see more layers out of things. It's kind of like people see the world in black and white, whereas you can see it in color. I think it just I don't know what makes someone into that way.
Again, I don't think you choose it.
What, the robotics or the complexity?
Complexity.
Yeah, I don't think you choose that. Genetics, brain chemistry, whereas someone, or have you been gifted with it? I don't know.
I mean,
who knows?
I mean, a lot of people have maybe experiences that they can't explain, and then that changes their way of thinking.
Well, I think the way I like to think about it is, and I'm just going off my psychology knowledge here, is we don't live in the world, do we? Like, let's just be honest. I mean, the world is a massive rock burning from the inside in the infinite universe. We don't live there. We live in our brain. Our brain, because when you're a baby, you might live in the world for a bit. Do you know what I mean? When you have to like see a water bottle for the first time and figure out what it is. But as soon as this is a known object, now my brain tells me what it is when I look at it. So it's not the world anymore. It's my brain's painted image of the world. And you can extrapolate that example of a water bottle to everything, to learning about what cars do, what cats are, what the sky's like. When you learn something and you navigate your environment, it then just becomes a cookie cutter version that your brain has put over the world based on what you've been told to believe and your own biases and perceptions and stuff. And I feel like two things. Being a deep thinker, or whatever this complexity we're trying to articulate is knowing that you're not the cookie cutter. That there's an awareness beyond that looks at life like you are in the world but not of the world. And maybe those people that go out through the movements of life and go through the motions and you look in their eyes and no one's really home, they're in a place where their cookie cutter is all there is to them. And it's rigid, and it's unchanged, and it's more simple. And it's like, I get up, I go and do this job, I numb my brain so I don't have to think about anything, and go to sleep. I mean, I follow my basic desires, but there's no disconnection. There's no recognition that, oh, my reality is just based on what I believe in a lot of ways. And then the curse to that is once you've disconnected from the image, you go, oh shit, it's just an image. It's just a game. When you can you talk about detachment, when you detach from it and go, oh, the world is just a picture painted by my brain, and I'm just living out this drama. Then that's when you struggle to relate and actually, what's the meaning in it? It's not real. Oh, I thought I wanted something real. What even is real, and what even is me, and all those weird questions arise. So maybe I think it's something to do with that. It's something to do with perception. And again, I don't know if you choose that. And I don't know how it happened for me. and maybe you guys don't know how it happened for you, but something happens where it clicks and you go, oh shit, it's all a lie. I mean, a lot of it for me was just reflecting on, I mean, again, we can cut this out if you don't want this to be public, but have you had any psychedelic experiences? Because that was where a lot of that disconnection from the drama going on happened for me.
Yeah, not so much psychedelic, but I went on a 6-month drug binge when I was 22. That wasn't the first time I took drugs. I actually had like a year-long break at uni of anything. I was sober for a year. I got back to, taking drugs, and I just went mad on anything and everything. Ecstasy, 2CB. I didn't do anything like acid or anything like that. Shrooms I knew not to touch, because the last time I did it when I was about 19, I had a bad trip because this guy was pretending he was Mr. Alpha, and he was like pretending to push us in the sea because we were down by the sea. And that just put me and my mate on a really bad one, and we were both really anxious. Yeah. But after that 6-month binge, I ended up in hospital because I lost the plot. I wouldn't say losing the plot. I had such severe paranoia that I had to be strapped to a bed in hospital. And then my dad turned up. This whole street was cordoned off because I completely lost it. I think my friend who was here with me, he's damaged from it now because it was just all too much for the brain. And then, my dad turned up, and then he opted to sedate me, and I almost died twice. I had to be resuscitated twice. And then ever since then, I had lasting paranoia. As soon as I got out, I remember going out. I was stupid enough to go out the next day drinking, because I thought I was that person before all of this. And then I realized that I could hear my whispers were like about me, but it was everyone. And then, I went outside, and I had this idea that the police were plotting on me. By the way, I'm not actually crazy. I'm not diagnosed crazy, but this is like what was part of the repercussions of that. And it was just like everybody was whispering about me, and I was like, this is not normal. So I just drank more to try and blank it out, and I ended up thinking the police were plotting on me. So I got arrested. But then, that kept happening, and it lasted. I still get paranoid now, but I got arrested again, and I got put in like a program for alcohol, and I had to do that for 6 months. It wasn't the alcohol that did it, it was drugs. But that might have changed my perception a little bit.
Well, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so tell me if any of this seems inaccurate, but it sounds to me like you went into psychosis, so you lost touch with reality, and then this paranoia became real. It was like you were hallucinating that the police were plotting you, and everyone was talking about you, and you disconnected for a moment, like you're playing a video game. I mean, your controller disconnected. You weren't in the world anymore, or what you thought the world was. And then you've come back, and years later, you're much more functional and sane, and you don't have such like extreme psychosis, obviously, but you're still detached. I mean, like your controller died, and you can plug it back in and put it back in the game, but once you're out, it's like taking the red pill in the Matrix. You can't unsee it anymore. Like for you, reality changed on a fundamental level, and it was in a very toxic and detrimental way based on where you were at. But you're never the same after something like that. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what.
Can I ask, like, when you're on that 6-month binge, what was like your brain like? What was it like to be in that?
When you're on the drugs, completely euphoric, and probably the most intense experience ever. And then when you come off it, probably the darkest thing you'll ever experience. Just sat there waiting for this come down to go, but I'd never let it go, because it would be week after week after week, because it would be mainly ecstasy or crystal MDMA pills, you know what I mean? And then just all sorts of stuff. Valium, Tramadol. I remember there was a packet here. Just like stuff that you shouldn't be doing all at the same time. Taking an obscene amount of Valium, probably like 13 or 14 at a time. And I'd sleep for like 4 days, wake up, drink, then back to it. And it just spiraled out. Balloons, an insane amount of them. And yeah, then it came to this one day where it was just what it was, you know. I really don't know what it was. It wasn't MDMA. It fell apart too easily, and that's what triggered it. But yeah, this whole experience was just, the paranoia creeped in slowly, kind of ignored it. But then it just kind of peaked. And it was like times where I couldn't sleep for like 3 or 4 days straight. And then like it started inclining. I think maybe brain damage happened or something because the paranoia just got out of control.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, man. It's profound. You know what I mean? You went, as much as it like, yeah, you fried your brain and stuff, like you went to some deep, dark places. I mean, going back to what I said about Carl Jung's idea of the tree having its roots in hell to go up to heaven, it's like you went out, bro. You went down there. You know, you saw where the demons spawned from. You know what I mean? You saw the place the demons don't even want to go. And the process over the last decade maybe or something is you climbing up that tree. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, I mean, it to me now, from talking to you, I understand why your music has so much depth. And I understand now why the average person might not understand your music on a level or might not be able to recreate the kind of feelings that you invoke from the music because they haven't had the same depth of life experience that you've had. And in some little snapshot, you've created something that communicates to people like us, whatever those deep parts of life are that most people don't want to address or don't know how to address. So, yeah, man, I think thank you for being courageous and talking to 2 random kids on Zoom about it.
It's all right. Are you affiliated with that sort of stuff then, or psychedelic?
Yeah, I've had a few experience. I mean, nothing sort of too, I don't know, dark or anything, but it was more like I'm a weird kid, right? I've been weird for I've been weird for about 4 years. I've been like this for like 4 years, and like you saying that I sound like a 30-year-old, that's how it feels, man. I just don't connect with people my age, and neither does Jacob. That's why we console each other via a podcast. But when I turned 18, I was like, I want to see what's on the other side. So had some experiences, and I was talking to my dad the other day about how it feels like when you put your mind in a different state of consciousness, you get a glimpse of what's actually there beyond, like I was talking about earlier, beyond the human limitation. So we live in these 4 walls in our brain, and having certain experiences that alter your consciousness, like it's like putting a trampoline in the middle of the room and you can jump on it and you see just above the wall, you get a glimpse of what's really there, and you can't describe it because it's a split second. You're jumping, you see, whoa, your eyes are open, you're like, whoa. And then the trampoline goes away again, and you're back in the 4 walls, and you're just like, oh, this is just 4 walls. Like, there's so much beyond it. And I think maybe what you did was you blew the walls to shreds. You know what I mean? There was no walls.
I can still get there now with alcohol. It hasn't left. I can still open that gate. Alcohol still does it, and the paranoia can return at any point, just by choice.
Yes.
Just whatever mood, like stress. If I'm stressed, yeah, drinking will bring out that paranoia crazily. But it's crazy to think you both talk like this. You're 19. It's insane. Do you think that's something to do with the generation now are more like, I don't like the word awake, but what would the word be? I don't know, it just seems like more, I can't remember when I was, 19? What was I doing? Probably drinking cider in the park. Not thinking about this sort of stuff.
So
But
we got a caveat with me and Jacob are weird blokes, but I think that's a good thing. And I don't know, man. I've just followed my interests. I think when lockdown hit, I sort of cut off from my previous friend group and started following ideas in psychology and philosophy and spirituality, and like I found a lot of satisfaction and meaning in that, and then I've just followed it. Go on, Jake.
Oh, for me, it was more of a complete change. I can relate to you on a very micro level because I had one crazy drug experience where I saw God, and then after that, everything changes, and then you rethink everything, and then I started the journey. So I think that's something that me and Joel have in common. That is why we sort of think and act like this. And as for a generation, I think a lot of people are having these experiences. A lot of people seek it out because it's a complex world, but also as teenagers now, we keep wanting more. So there's a lot of people having these experiences. I'm mainly referring to sort of psychedelic and that allowing them to ask the questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's more knowledge out there, and I think the internet, as much as it has many curses on society, is one thing that's opened that up. Because if I was born 40 years ago and I had those same feelings in me to follow some sort of quest for knowledge and quest to find some answers to what the hell I'm doing here, what would I have? Some books in the library, maybe in a weird section that's dusty that most people don't look at. Whereas today, you've got public figures openly talking about it for free online, and that's probably the way my brain is, and the way I speak and think and act is just based on the fact that I've been able to access years of people's knowledge and interpretations of philosophy and psychology ideas from the 20th century that I'd never come across in daily life now. But I'm sad to say, like, literally, we're starting to run out of time. But I've enjoyed this conversation a lot, man. And it's good to meet you. And it's also puts, for me, a lot of context behind your music now. So gonna bring me even more depth and clarity. But
what's that question that you normally ask at the end, where like if like you give the mic to them to say whatever they want to say?
Yeah, man, I'll give you just some open space to speak to the world, because as much as we don't have hundreds of thousands of listeners, me and Jacob will look back on this podcast in 40 years' time and think about the things we used to think when we were 19. So there's going to be some ears, even if it's just ours, listening to this, that will take some value away from the conversation we've had previously. And is there anything you'd like to say to the world? And I'll pass you the microphone.
Cool. Life is a journey. Solve your deep trauma, because that'll hold you back from a lot, including love and a lot of things in life. It'll affect your whole life more than you think. I'm just trying to think of things that I'm learning. Open your mind, yeah. Be nice to people. I don't want to sound cliche being nice to people, but being horrible just doesn't work, and you'll attract that energy back to you. And you can do that via what I was talking about earlier, addiction. That'll lower your aura to a certain mood where people will be attracted to you that you do not want around you. Lastly, just enjoy it. Just enjoy the journey.
There you go, man.
That's all I can say.
That was a very nice way to end it. So, Farsi, Lewis, thank you for giving us your time. We'll obviously share your Spotify link and Apple Music or wherever platforms you're on. But yeah, thanks for giving us your time and having a weird conversation with us that will now be immortalized via internet platforms.
I love it. That's all right.